Stop us if you've heard this one before. Money to run, it's true, right? Money to fund the government is going to run out on September 30th. That means you're going to start hearing more about wheeling and dealing and talks of a possible shutdown. That was pretty good, right?
It's pretty convincing. I stopped.
No, not my reading, but the way it was written.
Oh, it's
Stop
clever.
if you've heard that. Yeah, clever. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reportedly told House Republicans this week that he thinks Congress will have to pass a short-term funding bill, but the level of bipartisan support for such a bill remains unknown. Joining us now, Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. He's ranking member of the House Budget Committee, but it did get some positive reception from some Democrats, Congressman. Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer said, yeah, it might be something it would do. But then the devil is in the details, I guess, whether enough Democrats would be supporting this. What do you think is going to happen?
I think that what will happen in 2023 is what happened in 2020, 2021, and 2022, and that is there won't be a government shutdown. There will be a short-term CR that will continuing resolution that as long as it's clean and there's nothing snuck in there that's a major policy change, it will probably buy us more time to early December. And then I am hopeful that we will avoid a government shutdown. Look, I think that what happened in June to resolve the debt ceiling issue that we talked about a lot earlier this year, when you saw a piece of legislation that 2/3 of House Republicans and 80% of House Democrats voted for, it shows that there is a real willingness in the middle, broadly defined, even though a lot of the attention tends to go to the extremes.
Right. I mean, there was an infrastructure bill that was passed, and that took support from both sides. It can be done, Congressman, but that doesn't say that there aren't some significant differences, and we can point fingers at how we got here in terms of debt to GDP, but it is a little bit frightening right now. I'm not sure how you think we should address it, but we've seen numbers that by 2050 we could be at 180% debt to GDP, and that we won't be able to spend money on anything other than paying interest.
I mean, when you're talking about the long term, I mean, there's a certain phoniness to this debate in that what you're talking about is a legitimate issue. I mean, the long term debt projections are a serious matter and need to be tackled. When I talk about the phoniness of this debate, it's that a lot of times politicians in Washington will only be talking about what's called non-defense discretionary, which is about 12% of our budget, and it's over really what we're going to be spending next year. Nothing we do on that will in any way make a significant dent to our long-term debt projections.
We're 130 now, so or 133 or something. So it's not way off in the future that it's starting maybe to eat in to what we're able to do. And you know, Social Security's. And if we can't, if the amount of the pie shrinks onto the discretionary side of things, and Democrats and Republicans both want to do a lot. There's a lot of problems we want to solve. And if it's all spent servicing the debt, that doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, so service on the debt is a rising portion. I mean, it's right now in the mid to high single digit range. The reason why it's been going up, of course, more than anything is because the increase in interest rates. But what I would say though, is that for all the naysayers and doomsday types, this has been a pretty bad year for them. At every turn, this economy has been getting better and better, and the overall economic picture has been getting better. I am confident that we will be able to come together and solve our long-term debt issues. I remember in the early 1990s, Ross Perot based this entire 92 presidential campaign on how the debt was going to drive us into disaster within about 10 years. Well, within 10 years, the major debate in the year 2000 was what to do with the surplus. We can get back to that.
Right. There are people that say that's the last. It was funny. It was a Republican who said it, but the last fiscally responsible president we had was Bill Clinton. Was the last time that we had someone that really did get things in order. I do have one question for you, because I've seen the rollout of the term Bidenomics, and all the president's men and women have been out talking about it. Why do you think it's not resonating? Why do most people? I think it's 1 out of 3 at this point approve of President Biden's handling of the economy. Do you think they don't know what they're feeling? They don't know how good they have it, or are there true issues with, with economic life, with 8% more possibly mortgage rates, and with inflation, which has come down, but it doesn't reverse the 2 years of really high inflation we had. The prices are still where they were. They're just rising more slowly. I mean, people feel something that makes them very pessimistic about the economy right now.
Yeah. So first, Joe, I would never begin to tell people that what they're genuinely feeling is somehow not true. I think that would be arrogant. What I would say, though, is if you look back to other recoveries, whether it was a decade ago or even the early 1990s coming out of that 92 recession, there has historically been about a 6 to 9 month lag between things getting better and people finally reflecting that they're feeling it. There's also this really interesting wrinkle in the polling that shows even for people who think the economy isn't getting better, when you ask them about their own life and their own circumstances, they reply that it is getting better. So I do think that you will see the polling increase over the next several months. I mean, we really are, when you look at all the OECD countries right now, the United States of America, both in terms of unemployment and the inflation rate, we are leading right now the rest of the major economies.